This is Alex Levin, co-founder and CEO of Regal, and I'm here with Eric Hauser, CTO of Cadence. Thank you for joining me, Eric.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
So we were just talking about the fact both of us are in ski towns now, so it's the optimal time of year for this. Although I think, out in Utah, you have a little bit more snow than Colorado. My brother lives in California and they have nothing in California. Do you guys get out a lot?
The snow is not quite as amazing as it was last year. It was the most snow they've seen here in 40 years. And by the end of the winter, our dogs were just walking over our fence in the backyard because we had so much snow. Unfortunately, I don't get out skiing quite as much as I'd like to. Probably in the same similar situation as you, being in
Yeah.
an early stage company. It's a little bit difficult to find time to get out there, but we try to go maybe once every weekend if possible. But certainly not hitting the same number of days as most people who live in a ski town.
Yeah, I was say you work for a healthcare company now. You got to get out and exercise and take care of yourself. It's important. So we were talking about it a bit before. You've had sort of three very different experiences. Four, if you even go back to sort of GovTech at the beginning, you were GovTech. Then MarTech, then in a hardware company, and now healthcare. It'd be super interesting to understand when you started out. Did you intend to have that kind of career where you went to different careers, or was this sort of happenstance? Like, how did that end up happening?
I don't think any of it was really done with a particular intentionality. Throughout my career, I would say that I've mostly been focused on, working with amazing people and really trying to solve hard problems. I was with ExactTarget as we scaled up to an IPO and then got acquired by Salesforce. And it was a lot of marketing automation work. And then kind of shortly after we got acquired, I switched over to kind of be a VP of engineering in the Salesforce platform group, where we were working in the IoT space, which is why a lot of people kind of associate me with hardware, although I've worked with very little hardware in my career. Always maybe a little bit partnering with hardware companies, I think, to deliver some solutions, but not a lot of hardware engineering in general.
So, if you think about, go back to like, you just graduated from school and, do you think, it was a good decision to go to a GovTech startup, or like looking back, like, is it something you'd recommend to sort of other folks, like as a starting place?
Yeah, government was interesting. At the time, when this is now 20 plus years ago when I started in GovTech. Most today I think everybody just takes for granted the fact that you can go online, that you can renew your driver's license, you can renew your plate, you can basically do a lot of your interactions with the government, right, just through state websites. At the time, that didn't exist. A lot of the early engineers that I worked with in GovTech were spending a lot of their time writing screen scrapers for mainframes so that we could actually put these applications on the web. And I think the thing that was great about being in GovTech at the time was it was still like very local. So even though I worked for a rather large company in GovTech, each essentially office was kind of operating independently. So it exposed me very early to kind of startup culture and startup environment, even though it was much more in a larger company.
Yeah.
So that was the experience I loved.
One that you can maybe explain to me, as you were in this world, when I go and buy something online from whatever Shopify, it's the normal 1% credit card fee, and it's not a surcharge, it's just included. Still to this day, when I go to a local government site and I go to pay a bill or something, if I want to pay with credit card, it's like a $10 fee. Whoever, I don't know, do they just have a monopoly on that and so they can charge that kind of fee, or is that like the government doesn't want to pay for their services and so they effectively use that to charge the consumer for the work?
Yeah, the company that I work for is named NIC, and they were recently acquired in the last couple of years by a company called Tyler Technologies. But most of these state web portals didn't have a way to essentially to appropriate funding to build all of these applications. And so the convenience fees that they end up charging on top of the credit cards was the way that they essentially funded the operations and the R&D to build out these web portals and all of these different applications.
That's interesting.
So the fee structures that you see there, that's probably the main reason why. Granted, it's been a very long time since I've been in that world and thought about that, and maybe those models have evolved a bit since then. But
No, it makes sense. I've always wondered. So that makes a lot of sense. So then, you had this fantastic ride at Exact Target. I mean, not everybody even knows the Exact Target name anymore, but they were really the first ones to, from my understanding, to really look at how do you do event driven marketing? How do you actually gather real-time customer behavior information, create a unified customer profile, and then allow the triggering of, in this case, largely email, but one-way marketing out to a customer. So what was that sort of path like? Did it just take off, or did it take a lot of time to convince people that this was a better way than the sort of old batch and send marketing?
Yeah, exact target. A really interesting story from my perspective, I think, relative to a lot of companies that have gone on to IPO and be very successful. I mean, Exact Target started solely as an email marketing company. And, the growth of the company was good, but not amazing. I think we filed for an IPO. We pulled back to introduce some market things, I think maybe around 2008, 2009. One of the things that eventually really ended up causing the company to take off was exactly what you just mentioned, was the introduction of more event-driven marketing. We built some functionality called data extensions, which is similar to like Salesforce custom objects. And all of a sudden we had some of the largest companies in the world uploading a lot of their marketing data to our platform and then processing that data in order to run these campaigns. Around that same time, the big thing that really started to come into play was also cross-channel marketing. At the time, SMS marketing, push notifications, other ways of like reaching customers wasn't really that prevalent in the industry. It was mostly email. And so cross-channel came around. And then I think probably around 2011, I was running engineering for the marketing automation team at Exact Target. And Scott McCorkle, who was our CTO at the time, said, "Hey, we built this application with one of our largest customers, which everybody would know is one of the largest companies in tech. And in 3 months, we want to go launch this thing to every customer we have at our conference. What can you do about that?" So there was a lot of long nights and long weekends involved, but essentially what came out of that was the Journey Builder product. And I don't know if Exact Target was the first company really to push journeys marketing and as really the way to go, but it was pretty novel at the time. Not a lot of other companies were doing it this way, and I think now if you go look at the marketing industry and you look at a lot of the modern platforms that people have adopted and are doing this, basically all customer journeys. It's a declarative user interface that allows marketers to very quickly create campaigns, very complex campaigns, where before, you're talking about, 3 months of consulting engagements and a lot of ETL going on and a lot of jobs and a lot of rules to essentially create these very complex campaigns. And all of a sudden overnight, people were creating them. And so Journey Builder was one of Exact Target's fastest growing products. And, as far as I understand, it was played a big role in our acquisition by Salesforce.
Oh yeah, for sure. I look at, the companies that existed in those days, like there was Responsys that ultimately Oracle bought, and then obviously Salesforce bought Exact Target, and Salesforce made out like a bandit there. Turned out like that was the right one to buy between Responsys and Exact Target. And everyone now knows it as Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So some people don't even know it really is just the Exact Target product. But really, like to your point, like very impactful for customers when they move to that way of doing it. And now I look at it and I'm so thankful that Exact Target existed, and Segment and mParticle, and there were all these companies, these startups that went out and convinced people, move from a database infrastructure where you're building a list and then treating them all the same to this real-time eventing infrastructure, such that you can actually track everything the customer's doing. Like when we walk into a customer today, we don't have to convince them of that. Like they understand, at least for marketing, that is a thing. What's amusing to me, sort of amusing to me, is when I go to marketing teams and I talk about event-driven marketing, they all get it. If I go to a sales team, by and large, and I say, "Hey, let's go do some event-driven sales," they go, "Do you mean based on a conference?" It has not gone into the sales org. What's fascinating to me is the technology that even on consumer companies that the sales org uses comes from B2B, where sure, they have cadences, and excuse the pun. So like there's a sequence of things they want the agent to do, but there's no concept of a unified customer profile, no concept of a journey builder, no concept of customization per user, A/B testing. None of that exists in B2B. And I understand why, because there's a much lower volume and it's a much higher paid salesperson. But the sort of shame is that a lot of B2C sales teams, high velocity sales teams, took the B2B software instead of the marketing software. And it puts them at a massive disadvantage when you're then operating at huge scale. like the way I look at it often is like, a small business does a very good job of like knowing everything about their customers, interacting with them. But all of a sudden now you're at internet scale, and at the last company we were at in home services at Angie, we had millions of new customers. You couldn't possibly treat them like individuals if you were trying to do it with the old technology. The only possible way was to use this new set of marketing automation tools to be able to do it. But when we were there, at least, they didn't exist in sales. There weren't sales tools that would allow you to build a unified customer profile and do journey building.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You can't treat a B2C customer base like they're one cohort of individuals. Whereas in the B2B space, if you're selling, you probably have a few different personas that you're generally selling to. But as we now I'm operating in the healthcare space and we're talking to patients, patients have very different preferences about how they want to be communicated with, how often they want to be communicated with, what's the best channel to reach them, what's the best way for them to trust the communications that you're sending to them. And you're right, you need to be able to customize those flows. You need to be able to try different things. You need to be able to move very quickly. And in a world where I think a lot of more sales software is a lot more rules based and less configurable potentially than in the marketing space, I think it just makes it very difficult to do those things.
Yeah. The other thing, I was talking with the CEO of a company called Invoca the other day. The other thing that's a shame is in a lot of consumer organizations, the marketing team is on this tech stack and is very advanced about what sources leads come from and A/B testing and trying different messages, with huge success. And then a lead gets given to the sales team or support team, whichever it is, with none of that information, and it's treated identically. Like when I think about when I used to run big support teams, forget sales, the handling for every single user was the same. When somebody came in, we deflected regardless what the user was. Maybe at the most we had like a VIP segment. Maybe that was considered sophistication. But forget any nuance on the source, on what messaging marketing gave them, what discount they came in on. A/B testing wasn't possible. It wasn't for lack of imagination. The tooling in contact center software didn't allow it. And so it was pretty crazy, the sort of difference in technology advancement in marketing versus contact center when I started working with contact centers.
Yeah, the marketing space has traditionally evolved very, very rapidly and very quickly, just because I think the overall TAM of the space is so large. I'm sure you've seen the MarTech infographics before, where you can't even count the number of logos, right, that show up, right? And a lot of these marketing, they have very large budgets, right? And so I think that's why we've seen such rapid innovation in that space, is because there's room for a lot of different companies who are trying a lot of different things. And you're able to bring all those things in together into some pretty amazing platforms.
Yeah, there is another thing that I think has happened, which is that in MarTech, you might have two CRM people in your email marketing system. So if the boss says switch, you need two people in a new system. In a contact center environment, you might have two admins, but now you have 200 agents. And so the rate of changing to new software is much, much slower because nobody wants to have to retrain their 200 agents on new software, even if they know that it's going to drive more revenue. And so I think part of the thing that I think I talk with customers a lot about is sort of understanding where they are on the maturity scale of process and technology in contact center software and recognizing how early they are, right? Some people think, okay, if we're doing a great job of handling things very quickly and we're handling very few interactions, we're mature. Well, no, that's super early on the sort of the lens of what is possible to do in customer service or in sales. When we sort of say, look, what real maturity looks like is being able to treat every customer in the right way, in the right moment, in the right message, what you were saying, in the right channel. They go, oh, well, we're nowhere near there. And we go, okay, yeah, if you could get there, the improvement in customer lifetime value is double or triple. So we're not saying you have to go do it overnight, but at least know that there is a goal where if you get there, you'll massively improve your business. And that at least gives them motivation to start looking at making bigger changes in technology faster. Because if you believe you're close to the maturity point because you're doing a good job of handling things quickly, yeah, you're not going to go invest in new technology.
Yeah, I think an easy way to think about it is, how mature is your patient acquisition funnel versus your patient retention funnel? Yeah. And I think most companies would say that the tech they have on the acquisition funnel is significantly more advanced than what it is they have in the retention funnel. And
Yeah.
maybe in today's world where everybody's focused a little bit more on capital efficiency and a little bit less on growth, that's a big opportunity for most companies to advance what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. So I interrupted your sort of your trajectory. So you were all of a sudden bought by Salesforce. What was that like? Was that like everyone was celebrating and it was the greatest day of your life, or was that sort of a letdown after sort of wanting to be a public company?
I think everybody was definitely excited. Also didn't quite know what to expect because, when you get acquired, there's this big, long, quiet period where there's an announcement made, but then you don't really know necessarily exactly how things are going to pan out. And once it happened, I think once the acquisition went through, I think most of us were just excited to be able to start interacting with our Salesforce counterparts. And I was in a little bit different position than a lot of the company. ExactTarget actually started in the Midwest in Indianapolis, Indiana, which was where the majority of the employee base was. I had moved to San Francisco with ExactTarget, about a year prior, and so had a little bit more easier access, I think, to the Salesforce team that was there in San Francisco. But I would say, immediately from day one, it was clear that this was going to be a really big change for the company and for everybody involved. And overall, I think it was very exciting change for the organization. I would say the thing that's probably that Salesforce has done extremely well with ExactTarget is really integrating it into the sales motion very quickly. And it's the reason why the Marketing Cloud has grown so quickly is Salesforce has, just had a long history of doing this with a lot of their major acquisitions. And Salesforce probably has the best B2B sales team. Obviously, maybe I'm a little biased for my time there, but Salesforce probably has the best B2B sales team in the world. And, very quickly into being able to integrate things like Service Cloud, which was an acquisition, Marketing Cloud, and all these other acquisitions that happened into that sales funnel really, really drives significant growth in those businesses. And so, ExactTarget was already relatively large by today's standards when we got acquired, and the growth really just shot up quickly after that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. So then, after being in software businesses, how did you end up, going to work with, Michael at Drone Deploy?
Yeah, so Drone Deploy, I got into Drone Deploy through, so I had known Rory O'Driscoll at Scale Ventures through ExactTarget, and Rory was on the board of Drone Deploy. Rory is a fantastic investor, and I think he's been on the board of like Box and DocuSign,
Yeah, oh, I
and
know. He loves this space also. It's so fascinating to me with investors, particularly. I'd say about half investors hate MarTech, and they believe that there's no differentiation and that it's too easy for somebody to copy it. And there's a million companies and they stay away from it like the plague. And then half investors go, sure, that's all true. But in email, there's $10 billion companies. And in SMS, there's going to be $10 billion companies. And in, whatever phone marketing or, sales, there's going to be $10 billion companies. So it may be true that it's sometimes easy for new companies to come in, but there are still big winners. So he's one of the converted. Like he really loves it.
yeah, I mean, just I don't know if I've ever been around anybody who just is such a wealth of information on how to run a B2B SaaS company than Rory. One particular piece of advice that stands out to me that I heard him say once is that he's never been part of a successful B2B SaaS company where the CEO hasn't been the best salesperson in the company.
That's
And that's a really great piece of advice, I think, because as a CEO, like obviously, there's a lot of sales that go on with customers, but there's also a lot of sales that go on internally around, what are the next initiatives we're working on, trying to recruiting, things like that. And I think that that's very true. I don't think that has to be true. And I don't think Rory did either about like early stage founders, right? Like if companies first starting out, but as the company grows and as the company scales, he made it clear that he thinks it's extremely important for the CEO to play that role.
Yeah, I mean, I come more from the B2C world, like, helping bring consumer businesses online. So this is the first SaaS company really my co-founder and I were part of. But, you pick it up quickly, like some of the basics, but I definitely think, I'm still always on the side of, distribution wins over technology every day. So I'd say your point sort of is related in that, you have to have very senior people in the company who are very focused on like how you're going to get this thing to market. Otherwise, yeah, there's too much great technology out there that doesn't sell itself.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, I think that's always been, you know, early days Salesforce, right, was just kind of a wrapper around Oracle database, and the technology probably wasn't the best on the market, but they sure figured out distribution real quick.
Yeah, yeah. There is sort of like a different angle on it, which I think about sometimes. So I can't remember who said it now, but there's a famous expression: in a market, the winner is determined by whether the incumbent can get innovation or the startup can get distribution first. So like I sometimes think about that is it's not an absolute the distribution always wins. It's who, can you get distribution before the current players can get innovation?
Yeah, and I think in today's world, the expectations are just high across the board because the barriers to entry and to build great technology have lowered a lot over the last 10, 20 years. There's a lot of open source software out there that you can potentially use to do some complicated things. I'm sure that in your stack you make use of a fair amount of that for all the events that you're processing.
Oh yeah,
And
it's fabulous. Like we're very friendly with like the folks from Braze and Iterable, who were sort of the next generation after Exact Target, doing some of this stuff. And when we were talking with them early about like what tech stack we were going to use, they were so jealous because like they had built everything in like completely the wrong tech stack, and they've like obviously managed to build a phenomenal business. I'm not trying to detract from that, but yeah, we were so lucky to be able to go and use things that didn't exist even a couple years ago, and it allowed us to build, a journey builder that was much more advanced, for sure. It still takes years to build a journey builder. It's not one of those things you can snap your fingers
yeah,
and just build. But because you have both the real-time event processing and all of the capabilities around the nodes that you're going to actually execute. But yeah, it's like definitely given us a huge leg up over the existing one. So that's been fun for us because I can go needle them and say, hey, look at what tech we're on.
yeah, that's right. I mean, we built Journey Builder once at Exact Target, and then we built essentially a very similar product for Salesforce. It was Salesforce IoT, which is now just part of the normal Salesforce platform that they sell. But we built it to be on a scale that was multiple orders of magnitude higher than Journey Builder. At IoT, we were processing billions of events per day for some individual customers in order to power their journeys, and they would have been very difficult to do if we hadn't been able to take advantage of a lot of the open source infrastructure that was available to us at the time.
Yeah, oh, for sure. It's completely different. So now, obviously you've moved on to healthcare. What's the sort of founding story behind, Cadence, for a customer ultimately then, like why should they be using Cadence?
Yeah, Cadence started in during the pandemic. This company was bootstrapped by Thrive Capital. Chris Olchek is CEO, co-founder. Kareem Zaki, who's an investing partner in Thrive, was also a co-founder of the company. And it really started around the idea that we needed to rethink how patients who have chronic diseases, are managed in our healthcare system today. If you're a patient who has a chronic disease, you need help when you need help, not when it's, necessarily your primary care doctor is available to help you. They have very busy schedules. It's hard to get an appointment potentially. You can maybe see your primary care doctor once every 2 weeks if you're acute about something. And these patients need help 24/7, 365, and they need it on their schedule when they need it. And so that's what Cadence was really founded to help solve. So we partner with today, 8 leading, academic medical centers and health systems, and we've built clinics for virtual heart failure, diabetes, hypertension, and are able to give care to patients 24/7. We've had some really encouraging outcomes from the program since we've started, that we've shared with such organizations as the American Heart Association, where we're able to drastically reduce the cost of care for patients that are on our program. We're able to reduce a lot of clinician burnout that comes from getting constantly pinged by patients and having to answer messages in their EMR. And the clinical outcomes are also phenomenal. Patients on Cadence, who, for instance, in our hypertension program, have been able to lower their blood pressure by an average of 10 points just by being in the program. So that's what was started on. We do this through with kind of what's called remote patient monitoring, which we give patients devices, connected blood pressure cuffs, scales, glucometers that they take home. They measure their vitals on a regular basis, and then we have a clinical team and technology that's essentially monitoring these patients 24/7 and kind of helping them through their journey and to get to a healthier place.
Yeah. So to your point, and you sort of already hit on this, but two of the major things we see within healthcare organizations, especially the more digital ones, is one, the explosion of patient information. partly because you're now giving them devices for them to actually be recording all of this, and two, the mismatch, what I would call the mismatched expectations on the supply of medical professionals versus like what customers want. So it's not just that medical professionals are, harder and harder to come by, which is true, but it's also that people expect the on-demand economy now. They expect constantly to have somebody available to them, and it makes it very hard to bring to life the customer experience that you guys want to bring to life because of all of that. So, obviously you guys have built a whole tech stack around this. Like, I guess, particularly when it comes to like Regal, why did you guys use Regal, or where are you guys using Regal in that customer journey to allow you to have the sort of customer experience you want?
Yeah, so I think first, to understand Cadence, it's helpful to understand, really how we work a little bit, which is, you know, we certainly believe, and I know this is an opinion that, Thrive believes in as well, which is, really to disrupt the healthcare space, you need to do it from the inside versus the outside. And we're lucky to, have found some amazing partners, in the healthcare space, a lot of the major health systems in the US who are able to partner with us and work with us, and we're able to work with existing physicians, as opposed to trying to set up a B2C model where we're going after patients, directly and competing with them. We're partnering with them and working with them. And so, when it comes to Regal, what we're really trying to do is we've got a large volume of their existing patients that we need to communicate with and outreach to about the program, and talk to them about the benefits and how they can get enrolled and how they can get on it, after their physician, places an order for them to join the program.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think as we were talking before, all patients are different. The channels that they want to be communicated, how they want to be communicated is different. And so I think there are just a lot of components that go into being able to successfully do that sort of outreach at scale. You need to have a telephony system that has the right caller ID. You need to be able to train your agents how to speak you train a lot of agents very quickly, how to speak about the program, how to monitor them, be able to coach them along the way, how they're speaking. You need to have a workflow for reaching out to these patients in a respectful way where you're not spamming them. This is an order from their doctor's office. We're not trying to marketing blast them to get them to sign up. And so, we started out with a very simple kind of like rules-based approach on our existing customer service platform, more as we were kind of testing this method of connecting with patients. And I knew very quickly from my marketing automation days that this wasn't going to work for very long. And as we went out into the space and started looking, for different solutions, I think, I was extremely impressed. I'm not just stroking your ego because you're running the podcast here, but I was extremely impressed, as I kind of found Regal, because it basically, you guys had all of the features that, you really want to be able to do this sort of like B2C, outreach at scale, wrapped up in a platform that essentially was just singularly focused on that. Where, could you build these sort of things on, some of the larger telephony platforms, like a Five9 or something like that? Yes, of course you probably could, but none of them do that very well, as far as I can tell. A lot of them.
Yeah, I tried to. I've been on, so at the last company I was on, Five9, TalkDesk, NICE, and Genesis over the time. And the only way we could get it to work is we would put agents in those tools. So the agent would sit in that tool, but their campaign management is super rudimentary. Basically, their campaign management is, put somebody in a list, put a user in a list, and then call that list X times for X days. So 3 times a day for 3 days. That's it. What we ended up having to do is we built our own tools on top of the contact center software to do all of the decisioning, segmentation, all of that. And eventually, when we realized we're going to have to go build our own journey builder, effectively unified customer profile to do this, it wasn't our business. Like, and we were, pretty big company doing over $1 billion in revenue, and we weren't going to go put, 30, 40 engineers on that project. Like, that was crazy. And like, that's where Regal came from, is we said, like, in email marketing, we would never think about going to build a journey builder. You'd buy Braze or Iterable or Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Why doesn't, this exist? It's even funnier than that. We went to the execs at some of the biggest contact centers. We were about a $14 million a year account, so pretty big. And we said, cool, here's how Braze works, build this for us. And they told us to pound sand. Said, not interested, it's not our business. We focus on customer support and deflection. You're talking about marketing automation and things that we don't do, CRM, all that stuff. And so, like, again, to some extent, I feel like I was forced to build Regal, because this is insane. Like if we don't go and do something, customer experiences are going to continue to be don't talk to me, don't talk to me, don't talk to me. Like that's going to be where the internet goes, where it shouldn't, right? The internet should go the way of, cool, there's this whole new digital layer, which is exciting and allows me to do things on my own. But when I want a personal touch, it's an amazing service experience in the same way where 50, 100 years ago, you might walk into a club and they go, oh, here's your favorite table, your favorite drink, your music is playing, and we're going to go get you your dinner. They knew people, and it made you feel special. Like why, what great brands are doing today, like why I think some brands are really winning is they're going back to that model and understanding service is a differentiator, not just a cost center.
Yeah, I the thing that was most telling to me is as I kind of reached out to my network as I was kind of exploring the problem space, and some people in my network are executives at those companies that you mentioned. They all gave me a different answer about what solution I should be looking at, which told me that this industry hadn't quite really solved this problem yet in a great way. And so I was very excited when I found Regal because it was kind of exactly what we had been looking for as a company. So
Yeah, well, look, we're very excited to have you as a customer. So this is what we love is, our North Star is how do we drive outcomes, in your case, patient outcomes, right? That's what we really are in this for. The technology is just, helping, the businesses do what they need to do for those customers. So this is what gets us up every day and very excited. So, as we sort of come to an end, I guess one question I always like asking people is sort of as a forecast, going forward. So if you're thinking about, the next couple of years, are there any sort of things that you're thinking about, that forecasts you'd like to make, whether it be in healthcare, or a lot of folks are, obviously talking about AI these days, but, what do you think people should be looking out for in the next couple of years?
I think it's hard not to talk about generative AI a little bit, just because as I sort of think about technology and things that have just sort of made me fundamentally think a little bit differently about what's possible. I think maybe when I was in high school and the first time I saw the internet was one. I think when the App Store came out for the iPhone, I think that was maybe another event that stands out in my mind. And then I think the first time I used ChatGPT to help me write some code, I think that was probably a third one that clearly sticks out. It'll be interesting to see how the technology curve progresses on generative AI, but it's very easy to see a world where generative AI and voice agents, whatever, will potentially going to be better than humans at doing certain tasks. Let's say somewhere in the next 12 to 36 months. There's a lot of tricky questions around that and the rollout of that technology. There's ethical considerations. There's how people will react to interacting with AI agents. But I think what's most interesting to think about there is almost every, let's take the healthcare industry for example. All of the existing paradigms are built around the fact that humans have to provide the services to make it go work. So the scheduling of when you need it, how often you interact with a patient, in a world where that cost essentially decreases by maybe 1 or 2 orders of magnitude, we really need to be rethinking patient journeys, for instance, from the ground up. What do those look like when it's 2 orders of magnitude cheaper to execute on, when you don't have to worry about staffing shortages, things like that. So I think there's a lot of things that happen, for instance, in healthcare that are really not medical advice, which I think it's going to be a much longer time frame for AI to be providing medical advice that I think that everybody can trust. But there's a lot of parts of that patient journey that aren't medical advice, where you can do those faster. Essentially, gathering background data on a particular patient, getting their histories, things like that, communicating with them about appointments, making sure they're engaged, making sure they're following medication adherence. All of these things, don't involve, giving direct medical advice to a patient. And so that's something that we're thinking about. I think the trick for all companies out there is where do you want to come in on the technology curve here? I'm sure that Regal is talking about this a fair amount internally as well. Don't have any inside info about that, but I'm sure it comes up a lot. And it's easy to see that as sort of as the technology is oppressed, there's going to become a point where certain things like voice agents are going to be relatively easy to do. it's not there right now. Right now, that requires you to have a lot of great engineers on your team to be able to pull that sort of thing off, and a long tail of kind of like iterating on that technology to be able to roll it out. But I don't think it's going to be very long before we see that. So I think that, that's I think that prediction is fairly obvious, like that's going
No,
to
I
happen.
love the theme of AI as a deflationary force, right? And what is going to happen to your point as the cost of some of these pieces, it doesn't have to be everything. Like we're not saying automate everything, but if all of a sudden X, Y, and Z go to zero price or very low, like what could you do with that money? Could you give people better service, or could you lower the price so much that there's more people that could get access to care? So yeah, I love the theme as a deflationary force. I mean, the other thing I think you're hitting on that I'll just end with is as some of these things become more possible from more sources. So, yes, you mentioned ChatGPT, but like there's going to be five providers that are able to do it at the level that we want, and that'll become more commoditized very quickly. So as that becomes more commoditized, I think the differentiation is not going to be in the layer of which LLM do you use, but how as a business do you tune those models? How as a business do you use it to, create a customer experience, a customer outcome? And so if I look at like where I think the innovation is going to come from, I think yes, obviously there's a lot of hard technical problems being solved that are important, but I'm excited about all the innovation that's going to come on the consumer company layer, the experience that you guys are creating or AAA is creating or Angie or whoever for that end customer using it, which yeah, there's still a lot of unknowns there.
Yeah, I mean, I I can't think of a time in my career where somebody tried to start with technology and then build a product right off of it, where it's you need to start with a product first, and you need to start with the customer experience, figure out what problems you're trying to solve, and then use the right technology for it. And I think AI the generative AI stuff that's been available, I think a lot of people are thinking about, okay, like what's possible now with this. And I think if you really just maybe start from a first principles approach to thinking about the customer journey, how that might change now that you have some of these capabilities, and how you would sort of layer that stuff in. That's the right way to be thinking about it. And then yeah, you just don't want to be too early, because you don't want to burn through R&D dollars and
Yeah.
GPU dollars, right?
I
And
was talking to a very senior engineering leader just yesterday, where their whole company was built on having hundreds of engineers doing AI things, and they're about to transition to a model where they're going to use existing new LLMs
yeah,
and massively reduce the size of the team because that's caught up with them.
yeah,
But
we're very early in this curve, but I think it's exciting. I think it's very exciting, and there's obviously certain concerns about realistic concerns about potential downside for AI. But if you think about how AI can also help better enable existing employees, making them more efficient, I think that there's just so many opportunities for upside here, that as a society, it's something to be really excited about.
yeah, Eric, thank you for joining me. So if people want to learn more about Cadence, where should they go?
They can go to cadence.care, which is a website. We've got a lot of information up there about the company. And we recently kind of released our outcomes report for 2023, where we talked about all of the patients we have in the program, the outcomes they were able to achieve. It's really fantastic piece of information if you really want to dig deep into kind of the company and what we're doing. I'd start there with what the patients are experiencing.
Great. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks for having me.